In the tidal marshes at San Pablo Bay National Wildlife Refuge, scientists Karen Thorne and Chase Freeman study how quickly sediment accumulates in the marshland over time. They use a surface elevation table, a device that measures elevation change to track soil buildup.
It's really important to monitor what the wetlands are doing because we want to know, are the soils building so they can keep pace with sea level rise, meaning that they can build their elevations at the same rate that they get flooded with the oceans. But if the oceans rise too quickly, then things start to submerge or get drowned. And so we can measure how much the soil is building, how much the plants are growing, both above and below ground. And these wetlands are really important because they provide habitat for endangered plants and animals and birds. And they also provide flood protection. So during storms or high tides in San Francisco Bay, they can absorb that water like a sponge and really prevent our highways and roads and towns from getting flooded. So they're a very important part of the estuary.
The U.S. Geological Survey installed 4 surface elevation tables at the refuge in 2013. Karen and Chase take new measurements periodically to monitor any changes.
This is the pickleweed I talked about. It's pretty cool. It's a succulent, native succulent. And you can see the red tips of all the salt from the soil that it collects over a growing year and then drops it in the fall. And if you were to taste it, it tastes salty. The surface elevation tables is a really common approach. So we have them, like we have some in the Petaluma River and the San Francisco Bay Delta, farther upriver. But they're also all over the world, throughout the United States and really just globally. So it's a standard approach that people all over the world can be, oh, I was so articulate. No, that people can use everywhere, and it's all comparable because we're doing the same thing. What?
Checking your pockets, what are you missing?
I was looking for my mask. I think I got everything. This shows the 4 corners of the plot. And then we'll walk on this so we don't disturb the plot.
That's ready to go. And here's the reader.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to be helpful. Was that helpful?
Are you reading or am I reading?
I think you should read.
I'm reading? Okay. This is basically a benchmark that we have out in the marsh. And then here's our surface elevation table reader. And it has a little notch right here that slides into the monument benchmark, the receiver, and it tightens down. And once it's completely tight, and all these are tight, we know that it's been in the same position as every other time that we've read it. Once it's level, we have 9 pins, and we're just going to slowly drop them to the soil surface. And sometimes you gotta get the vegetation moved a little bit so you can actually see the surface. And then you can just go ahead and start dropping them down. Okay, so now that all the pins are down, we are going to measure from the arm of the reader to the top of the pin. We'll be able to look at that measurement over time. If it's going up, measurement's getting bigger, then we know that the marsh is moving upwards. If the measurement's going down, we know the marsh is moving downwards. So pin 1 is 225, 229, 230, and 229.
So we were here in November of 2020, and based on his measurements, they've gone up. So we've gained elevation, or the wetland has built with sediment since then. So that's good news. Sediment is brought in from the rivers from our delta and also from the tides from the ocean, and it gets brought in with the tide floodwaters into wetlands, and then the plants capture it and it becomes part of the soil. So if there's less being delivered, then the soil doesn't build up enough. So it's flooded underwater too much in a day. So the plants out here are adapted to being flooded, but if they get flooded too much, they will die back and get stressed out. And so this is a pretty natural but complicated process, but you know, nature has been dynamic and responded to sea level rise over time. Just the question is how fast it's currently happening and if our wetlands can build up fast enough to kind of keep pace with that.
Each set has 4 corners. We have the A corner, B corner, C, and D. The A, B, and C have feldspar marker horizons, and feldspar is basically just a clay that hardens when wet, and as sediment gets brought into the marsh, it'll basically accrete onto that feldspar marker horizon, and then when we take a plug, we can measure the accretion above that marker horizon, which then relates to the elevation change that we're measuring with the pins. So this is the B corner feldspar marker horizon for this set. And if you come down here, basically what we did was we put out feldspar powder between these 4 posts. And over time, you can see sediment has come in, but also this biomass has also broken down and become part of the surface. So what we're going to do is we're going to move some of that away, and we are going to cut a little bit of a plug out of here so that we can measure the feldspar layer. So you can see that white area is the feldspar, and that was the marsh surface before when we put it out, and this is the marsh that has accreted on top of it. This is how we're going to be able to tell what is actual accretion versus the elevation change. It's important to know both of those, have both of those measurements, and basically be able to tell what is above ground and what's below ground surface movement.
Here in California, there's tectonics, right? So we're always sort of, you know, the land is always moving about up, down, right, left. But there's also sinking or land subsidence where we have lost elevations of the land because of land use or some other reason, you know, water extraction or something. So when the land is sinking, what it requires is that wetland to build its elevation even faster. So it has to accommodate the rising sea levels, but also the sinking of the lands. So it's actually something we call relative sea level rise, which means it's a local rate because of sinking land and rising seas together. It's an important thing to understand because right now most of our wetlands are keeping pace with sea level rise, but the current projections are that it's going to continue to increase over time, and so kind of tracking how things are doing out here is really important.